to our next point of conversation. Our next point of conversation is to discuss and possible vote to amend or revoke the special permit for the Urban Farming Foundation, Sean Porter. I believe I saw Mr. Porter on the list of participants. Yeah, got him here. If we can
I'm
unmute.
here.
Hey, Mr. Porter, how are you this evening?
I'm good.
Okay, so this item ended up on our agenda because we saw some alarming conversations as well as some alarming advertisements. So with that said, in the need for clarification, we issued a permit, and I think that the understanding based on your representations was different than what we were seeing being publicly discussed. Now, that may have not been by you or had any involvement by you. But at the end of the day, we have an advertisement. The advertisement dubs your event the Black Party, in parentheses, not the White Party, the Black Party, etc. We also have a scenario where the fire department was reaching out for an event in 400 to 500 folks, coupled with a kickball tournament, card games, etc. I'll say as one person, I was like, wow, he's having a really great barbecue. Like, some friends are going to hang. They're going to have a really great dialogue. And like, life's going to be good. And then all of a sudden, from all facets of the community, as well as African-American members of our community, were quite alarmed by the advertisements that occurred. So I wanted to clarify that with you and get an understanding of who you are, and then ask our board to, weigh in on what their understanding is and see what we can figure out. I mean, it seems like you're trying to put together an event, but
listen, up to 2 days ago, I hadn't even heard anything about this until I was contacted by Nicole Murray, Miss Nicole Murray, about this. I spoke to a gentleman who had heard about my foundation and heard about the barbecue. This is the third year we've been having this thing. And I told him about what we do, that it's a party. All we do is we eat and we play music. And at some point in the middle of the event, I stop the music and I tell people about my foundation, Urban Farming. It's a movement to help eliminate food deserts in the inner city. He said, wow, that sounds great. Can I speak? He told me about some work he did on Martha's Vineyard. I said, okay, you can say a few words. His last thing to me is, do you mind if I tell a few people about this event? So I then get a call about all the flyers out. And listen, the buck stops with me, so I'm responsible. All I can say is I've done this event. This is the third year event. Everything that you saw listed on the flyer was not approved, knew nothing about it, and it won't happen. There'll be no card games. There'll be no vendors. There'll be none of anything that you, like I told him, if he wanted to do all that, he should have went through the process. Hello. So all I can say is everything that you saw out there will not happen, and I will have an amended advertisement out there. My event has been going on for 3 years. The demographics is 40 to 70. There's a bunch of old Black folks listening to some classic R&B. I'm 56 years old. So, I mean, all this stuff about military, listen, we know but rich Black folks on Martha's Vineyard. I don't know what he's talking about. So all I can say is that I'm sorry that this was put out, but none of that is happening. So, I mean, listen, if you're not comfortable with the event, I understand, but what you saw is not what's going down.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. We were all comfortable with what you presented, but what was being promoted, unbeknownst to you on some level, or maybe all levels, wasn't consistent. So it's important for the integrity of the process, the integrity of your event, etc., for us to have conversations like this. And so just for clarification purposes, how many people do you expect at your event?
About 100 to 200 people who will circulate. Let me tell you what happens. The people on the beach hear the music right in front of the inkwell. They will come over, have some food, and then go back to sitting where they were sitting before on the beach. We've done this event. This is our third year. there's not a big mob of people that congregate because we don't have enough chairs to accommodate them. So they come get some food, then they go back to sit where they were. We've done this event 2 other times without incident. Again, the demographics of the event is 40 to 70-year-old folks. So again, as soon as I saw the flyer, I was like, yeah, you're gonna have a problem with the town. This is not what I told them I was doing. So I mean, listen, I fully understand why I'm here. So
well, I appreciate that. Select Person Barmakian has her hand up. Gail?
I have a couple of questions and a couple of comments. You're saying that it's not going to happen. How do you propose that you are not going to allow it to happen? Are you going to have guards there and you're going to tell these people they need to get off the park? From, a real reality is, how do you intend to do that? And, I stand by everything that he has said because I've witnessed it. And it's a wonderful event. But as all events happen in the most, crowded time of the summer, it can get out of hand as people hear about it. And I think this deserves a bigger conversation. And this event, maybe shouldn't be a consequence of it. But, realistically, how do you propose to stop that from happening? Because this is what happens, and it's left to the town to sort of police it, and we don't want to be put in that position. That's one of my questions.
Well, like I said, we have a certain demographics that we're attracting. So this idea that there's going to be a mob of people there, there's never been a mob of people there. And all I can say is we'll have our own volunteers out policing the place. But again, we're talking about a certain demographics, 40 to 70-year-old folks. I've had a house here for 50 years. That is the crowd that's going to be here. This is not, you're not having a bunch of young folks descend on the island. This is 40 to 70-year-old well-to-do African Americans. So, I mean, I'll have extra people there, but I foresee no problem, none. And again, none of the events that were listed will be there.
I don't disagree with you, but open your eyes. They're already here. What do you propose to do, or are you willing to do anything should it get out of hand and should another party show up? Because we have had actually events that have happened that were not permitted and they just show up. And again, like I said, the town is put in a position where we need to police it, and we don't like to do that. So do you have any definitive plan should something else, another party happen? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but that's the quandary we're in.
No problem. I can add a volunteer staff of 10 to 15 people that is added to what I've, we already spoke to the sheriff about one police officer. If you would require us to pay for more, I have no issue with that. Again, I'm not worried about it, but if you're worried about it, then I will do what is necessary. But again, please keep in mind the demographics. Please keep in mind the kind of music that is being played. This is not young people music. I'm 56 years old. It's the kind of music I like. So again, whatever you require listen, we've made the mistake. So whatever you require me to fix it, I'll take care of that. Whether it's volunteers, whether you need me to pay for more security, whatever. I'm expecting a rotating crowd of around 200 people, 100 to 200 people, like we've always had. But if you require more, just let me know.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
You're muted, Brian.
I appreciate your ownership of why we're here and recognizing, that, we're doing the best we can to make this thing work. And at the end of the day, the challenges are coming out of this advertisement. With that said, Select Person Ruley, and then Amy Billings, Park Commissioner, has her hand up. Park Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Porter. I appreciate you being here. And it's unfortunate that somebody, it looks like, is trying to take advantage of maybe an event that you're trying to put on responsibly. That said, I don't think we can ignore the fact that somebody has done that. They have advertised, they have blasted it out. It seems like it's reached a large group of people through social media. I understand that you had nothing to do with it, but I do have concerns that a certain group of people are going to show up outside of your demographic, outside of your planned party. That being said, I would like to see, as part of the license, if we address it tonight, I would like to see you reach out to the Oak Bluffs police chief and potentially have at least just one detail offsets up there I don't think it's a good position. Personally, I don't think it's a good position for you to have to try to fend these people off if they show up. I don't think it's safe for your folks to confront anybody or have to confront anybody. And quite honestly, I don't think it's your responsibility to do that. You applied for a permit here. It was granted. It appears that you had nothing to do with this other thing. But that said, I think if you still want to have a good, safe event, that the numbers are clean and it's the event you want, I personally would like to see you hire a police officer from the Oak Bluffs Police Department to be up there in case these folks show up, in case they start setting up these games, in case they start setting up their own food. And you could identify them and say, hey, that's not part of our group, and they can be asked to leave. I would like to see that. And then I would also like to say, do you have a contact information or a name of this person you spoke with that ended up putting out this ad? Because it looks like they advertised, whether it be falsely or not. They put the NAACP, they put a couple other local businesses on there. And quite honestly, I think if you have their information, the police department should follow up with them and see who this is and what's going on.
Well, this same gentleman, he invited your police chief to speak. So one of the persons he had speaking was the police chief. So again, I've already paid for the one officer detail. If you require another one, not an issue.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. I wasn't aware of that. And if you've already done that, I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay, great. Next up, we have Amy Billings and then Chief Blake and then Select Person Barmakian.
How you doing, Amy?
Good, thank you. So I'm just going to be clear again that our applicants will have their application on site. If there's any question, Mr. Porter certainly can call the police department and let them know that there's any person, group, or anyone that's not attached to his event. We have one permitted event for that day. There have now been multiples that are advertising for that day. It should not be on Mr. Porter to worry about the other people that are set up.
I know everybody who I know. Listen, all those people, the one gentleman who put all the black party stuff, I don't know him, but the other person I know, that'll be handled. Don't worry, but those folks, they'll be fine.
Right. So we have spoken to Mr. Porter yesterday at our meeting, and we've cleared all this up. He does have a detail, and I just don't know how to reiterate better that this is going to be an enforcement thing if it comes down to other people piggybacking off his event. And this is part of the problem with social media. And his event is very clear on what it says he will be doing. So I just
I will put out advertisements clarifying everything so that there's no mistake about what's going on. So the same social media that you found out about this will clarify all that's going down. So,
I think it's an important point in the conversation. And I think that it's great that the Parks Department was able to address most of this stuff in relation to crowds and things of that nature. At the end of the day, this board issues the entertainment license. At the end of the day, we issue alcohol licenses, not in the case, but normally. So we do have a role and we do have a responsibility. And quite frankly, to Gail's point, we need a much larger conversation within our community about what events are going to continue to occur, how we plan to permit them, things of that nature. We had a short-term policy that were no additional events in July and August. Quite frankly, as an individual, I think we should go back to it because the number of requests are mind-boggling. Everybody's coming to the vineyard. Everybody's got a charity. Everybody's raise money. The money is always headed to some charity that isn't tied to Martha's Vineyard, as if we don't have our own socioeconomic issues. And then secondarily, at the end of the day, it's like, how do I pay for my vacation? I'll have some kind of an event and I'll donate something to charity. So, I'm not saying that your event is, Mr. Porter. I'm just saying this is the standard mantra every day. The new Inkwell T-shirt being printed, and so on and so on and so on. And at some point, our commerce happens in our downtown district, and our beaches and our parks and things for public enjoyment. So I think that's the bigger point at hand. And then it's alarming when you do issue one permit for one location and you see advertisements like that. If it were ever advertised as the white party, not the black party, come to the white party, it would not be received very well, quite frankly.
There'd be a big problem, wouldn't there be?
That's not what our community is not about either of those things. We welcome everybody with open arms. At least that's how I've experienced our community. So with that all said, that's where the issue falls. So Chief Blake.
Absolutely. I think Mr. Porter has made it clear. I've been on a few email threads where the other people that were involved, the other groups, have been notified through Mr. Porter that what they were planning on doing is not part of the scope of his event. Therefore, I'm going to use the word uninvited, which is kind of a harsh word, but and the email threads I've been part of has been, okay, well, if we want to try something different a different day, we'll do it. Again, there is a police officer that's assigned there. And as far as I know through the threads and the people I've talked to, that they're not setting up their tables and not doing the events that they had planned. So again, if someone does show up, then we'll address it. But Mr. Porter has done a fantastic job of notifying the other people that were trying to get involved with this. In the grand scope of things, maybe they thought it was a great idea to just piggyback onto this, but that's not what was approved, and that's where we are today. So I thank Mr. Porter for doing that outreach. I've been part of the email threads, and he's been quite clear on what he's allowed to do and what they're going to do.
Okay, great. I appreciate Mr. Porter's cooperation and participation as well. It sounds like the police detail has been covered within the park department's permit. So then it becomes incumbent on us as a town to convey very specifically to that officer what is permitted, what isn't permitted, and when it becomes a scenario that they need to be reaching back to the department for additional help.
You're not going to have a problem. Trust me on that. Trust me.
I'm taking you at face value because I'm still willing to move forward with the event based on the statements and the precautions that have been put forward. If I wasn't a believer in that, then I wouldn't be supporting continuing to move forward. So with that said, Select Person Barmakian has her hand up. And then from there, we'll see if the board wants to take any additional action or if our concerns have been satisfied and we can move on.
Yeah, this is really a beautiful event, and unfortunately, we have these issues. And Mr. Porter, I commend you because he's inclusive and open to all, and that's my understanding. It's an open event, and he's not going to not serve a hot dog or a hamburger to somebody because they're not invited to the event. And that's the beauty of it. You're not invited. That's my understanding. And if I'm mistaken, just please correct me, but that's what makes it beautiful. And so far it's been controlled. It's sort of like a pop-up. So I just sort of want to know, maybe from Mr. Porter or from Chief Blake, how are you going to distinguish whether somebody is invited or not, or how it is going to be controlled? Because I'm still a little bit worried about it, and I want this to happen.
Well, Mr. Porter can speak to it himself, but I believe that the attraction for the other groups that were involved were the fact that they were going to set up and do their own thing and have their own speakers and their own whatever it was, card games or whatever. So if that's not happening with those groups, then I don't see the people that are associated with those groups coming to the event unless they were already going to come to it in the first place. You know what I mean? So it was an attraction because groups came on board that said, okay, I'm going to set up a table and do X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to set up this game and do X, Y, Z, or this, whatever they were going to do. Now that they've been not involved, not part of this process, or not part of this event, I don't think the people that were gonna come to it before them are gonna show up, but that's my submission.
Yes, we've had this barbecue, this is 30 year running, and it's open to all. People will stop by, get food, and they keep on moving. So we're not stopping anybody from coming. These people are coming for a specific agenda that they wanted to push. That has been taken off the table. That's been taken off the table. So
Okay.
there's no kickball game or card thing or some kind of boost they wanted to set up. All that's gone. Their reason to come is gone. So
Okay.
again,
Right.
I'm not worried
So-
about,
I got you. I got you.
My becomes, I just glanced through a long talk website that's promoting this event. My question is, who's going to reach out to this entity? Does this happen through the park department? Who reaches out to this entity to let them know that their event is not a permitted event? It's not an event that's allowed to occur. And I'm reading on their website very briefly. It's a 49-year veteran visitor of this stolen land. So at the end of the,
I've personally spoken to him.
well, I appreciate that, but the website is still up. And
All right.
I just looked at it while Gail was speaking. The website is still up, and as a town, we need to notify so that when transgressions occur to our permitting and policy process, the relevant parties can take the relevant actions.
I got you.
Is this something, Amy, do you reach out directly to these folks to let them know that this advertised event formally in writing is not permitted and not allowed, and et cetera? Who handles that? And then once that's been done, does that then shift to the police department, and then it becomes the police department's obligation to manage that piece of it? Because it's certainly not Mr. Porter's responsibility. Those were open questions. I'll unmute Amy. Amy?
All right, fine. Okay, sorry, I wouldn't unmute me. So we do the best we can when we see these to reach out to anybody and let them know that they're not permitted. We've had numerous conversations with other people this summer. Not always can you get through to a website. One of the ones that was advertised for, I don't know, might have been last week or it's next week, was just a website to sign up if you're a member of the fraternity. So there was no contact information. There was no way for me to contact anybody. So again, yes, we do the best we can. Mr. Porter reached out to the people he had to reach out to about this weekend's events. But we don't have a policy that tells us what to do when people advertise something that they can't do, as you know, with yoga and exercise classes and barbecues and everything else that are happening on town property. Everybody wants to be in that area this summer. It started a couple years ago, but it's only going to get worse. So yes, it's a bigger conversation, but for this weekend, we have to take Sean's word for it that these other people are not going to set up. And if they do, then they will have to be asked to leave. He's jeopardizing his relationship with the town, as well as, the fact of being able to finish his event.
I understand, but in this case, you have a very clearly identified, they're in the chat saying that they're going to withdraw, they're not going to have the participation, no worries, etc. There's a website, etc., etc. Chief Blake always comes back when we notify him of these unpermitted events that are being advertised for notification to happen from the park department to whoever is advertising in the best of our means to attempt to notify, for that information for the police department to be copied to them, and then the police department puts it on their radar and they manage it accordingly. So is it the park department that's going to reach out directly to a long talk to formulate that formal written correspondence so that the chief has what he needs to take whatever action he may or may not need to take? Is that the case? I mean, this specific event, not general.
Is there contact information on their website? Because I am not on social media, so I haven't seen any of these advertisements. They're being sent to me.
It's in-
I'm sure Mr. Porter can share it with you, Amy. Mr. Porter, could you please forward that gentleman's information to Amy?
No problem.
And the website is also listed in the,
They're gonna submit a formal withdrawal to you guys, so,
There's no withdrawal. There's nothing to withdraw. I will
Okay.
email now.
great. So it sounds like, I think that we're good overall. How does the rest of the board feel? I think that Mr. Porter has, been unfortunately impacted. And I think that this was a good conversation because it's going to spark much larger conversation within our community. One, and two, it gives us clarification and the comfort that the permit we issued is being respected and honored in a proper way by Mr. Porter. I don't know that there's any additional action to take other than to thank Mr. Porter for his time and all of his energies and his efforts, unless any members of the board feel differently. I'm not seeing any other hands or anyone else in the chat popping up. So I think that that's where we stand, Mr. Porter. Again, on just behalf of the board and the town, I appreciate your willingness to understand the position that we were put in, and we understand the position that you were put in. And we look forward to your event. As you said, it's the third one, and hopefully everything goes smoothly and everybody has a wonderful time.
well, thank you for your time. And again, I'm sorry this all happened, and I have to take the blame for not being more careful. But hey, I thank you.
It could happen to anybody. So we appreciate your participation and good luck with your event. Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
Bye
next, vote to